BRB UK. Worse teeth, better accents.
Hello, and indeed, ahoy, hoy, welcome one and all, episode 545, Jesus wept, of BRB UK is upon you all. That really struck me, that's a massive number. I'm Dan, I'm one of your hosts. Why is that number so big? Tim, why is that number so big, Tim? Why is it so big,
because
the number?
That's how numbers work, Dan, they get bigger as they go, and we've been going for far too long by the looks of things.
Right.
No one stopped us
However,
yet.
I would say that there is not a linear relationship between number of episodes and quality. The episode 545 is not 545 times as good as episode 1, for example, unless you're talking about episode 1 of Star Wars, herp, then it is 540 times.
Now this is
less Jar Jar
podcasting.
Exactly. Look at you, finger on the pulse of the internet zeitgeist circa 2003. That's right. Podcasts. Cool. So it's a week. It's only me and Tim this week. Coleman, yet again, is in his super secret petrol station, serving super secret people super secret bags of minstrels and maybe jelly babies.
Ooh, jelly babies.
I know jelly babies are a superior sweet.
I always forget about them, and then I'm
Pop
like,
quiz,
ooh,
Tim.
jelly babies.
Pop quiz.
Yeah.
All right, pop quiz. Fruit pastels or jelly babies?
That's tough. Probably go fruit
This
pastels.
is podcasting!
Probably go fruit pastels.
Peak podcasting right here. That's it. Join us for yet more video game-based news. Also talking about sweeties. It's been a week. There's been actual new stuff to play. The summer, or the early summer, continues on with its slightly ridiculous cadence of things to play.
Indeed.
This time with lots of VIs and IVs in it. And most notably, I've been touching base with a bit of Diablo 4, fourth base with Diablo 4, which is interesting. And you've been at sixth base, don't know what that is, with Street Fighter. And because I've got a feeling there's a lot of stuff you'd like to talk about Street Fighter, we're going to lead with Street Fighter, so help me God. All right, so Tim, Street Fighter, is it still forward down forward punch? Is that how I win?
Yes, unless you're playing modern controls, as they call them now. Modern controls just have one button to do your special moves and stuff. Maybe a button and a direction to do a different type of special move.
What?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I like that. I mean, to wind back, for those of you who've been under a rock since the early 80s and haven't emerged since, Street Fighter is a popular player versus player beat-em-up by those crazy cats at Capcom, and this is the sixth iteration of such.
Well, arguably the sixth iteration. Sixth mainline entry.
Yeah, the sixth mainline one, although there is like Alpha 2, Alpha 3, then there's all kinds of other stuff going on as well, which we won't get into. But this is the main game.
Turbo plus extra hyper fighting edition.
Look, it's Street Fighter. It's got number 6 after it. What more do you want? All right, that's all you're getting out of us. What more do you want? So it's a bit. I mean, to me, I have to say, it's starting to feel quite iterative. And I think when I looked at Street Fighter 6, just looking at it, I was like, oh, that looks fairly similar. But from what I've read, this is pretty much a super deep level rework of just about everything you've ever experienced in Street Fighter 6 before. So I'm excited, Tim.
Yes.
Festoon me with knowledge.
Well, from the ground up, it is a fairly different beast than what it is before. It shares some of the same, DNA of the original Street Fighter, and still feels like a Street Fighter game. But the actual, that's
why it's called Street Fighter.
Yeah, but digging down into it, the modes available, there's quite a few modes that have never been available in a Street Fighter game before, or not exactly the same as in any fighting game you could possibly say. But also, the actual way that the fighting game is structured and the actual base game itself and the actual, one-to-one fighting is very different than it was before as well. So let's deal with that side of things before we dive into the different modes a bit as well.
Okay.
A lot of the kind of phraseology sounds very similar because it all has the word drive in it, basically. But you've got a move that's similar to what I think they originally had it in Street Fighter 4. That's now called Drive Impact, basically. And in Street Fighter 4, you had the ones where it kind of had a black and white kind of artistic thing flowing behind you as you did the move. And this one, it's a much more
Arty
colourful
nonsense.
version. Much more colourful version of that. Everyone's got like colours that kind of exude out of them as they go, and they tend to match the character that you're working with, sort of thing. But the drive impact is basically just done by holding the two hard punch and hard kick down at once, and is a move that has armor. Anyone that doesn't know what armor is in a Street Fighter game or a fighting game in general, it basically allows you to, for want of a better word, punch through someone else's attacks, basically. So you can absorb those attacks, take the hits, and still get through the other side with your attack, basically.
So does it take health off you, or does it just stop you being staggered?
Right. You will still take health, but the attack won't stop the flow of your drive impact attack, basically.
Okay.
And it can only go through. It can only go through 2 attacks. So if someone does 3 rapid attacks, it still might stop you from getting through with your drive impact attack, basically.
So it's the fighting equivalent of having a conversation with you. That if you interrupt enough times, eventually it will stop the flow of Tim.
Quite possibly.
Right, okay, so you are the conversational version of drop. Yeah, and a derail him. Gotcha, right. Yeah. I'm now fully on board with what this mechanic is in Street Fighter 6. Gotcha, all right, okay.
The other thing that you can do to counter a drive impact is to do a drive impact yourself in response to one, but you've got to be quite quick in doing that, basically. That comes down to some tricky timings of, if you try and predict that someone's doing a drive impact but do it too early, you'll actually do it first and then you'll get hit by their drive impact. So that becomes a bit tricky, but it's basically a move that's available most of the time. Now, it's available from the start of the round.
Right.
There are what they call like super arts, which are like your super moves like you've had in previous games, where it's a jazzed up version of your move that's like kind of does all the flashy stuff and everything goes off on the screen and does a lot of damage. Now, there are super arts, and there's 3 different levels of super art, and you have to build up that super meter as you go through the fight. That's fairly standard, and there's kind of been similar mechanics to that, even though they've called it different things over the years. I think it was a super at one point. It's now called the super arts or critical art as you get all the way up. But anyway.
I have a question.
Yes?
Do they not just find increasingly complicated ways to rename things that have existed for a long time?
Yes, but let me get through this, because it does actually change a bit as well. Because basically, the super move is a slightly separate thing, and you have levels 1, 2, and 3 of that you build up to throughout the fight, and you can trigger the level 1 fairly easy. They are, as they were in previous games, they're your kind of double fireball motions mostly to kick them off, basically. And it's usually a double fireball forward or a double fireball backwards with a button that kind of triggers that move. The thing that is a bit different is the drive impacts that I was talking about before, and your what they call EX moves, which are like slightly enhanced versions of your normal special moves. So a special move would be a dragon punch or a fireball, and an EX version of, say, a fireball would be a fireball that hits twice. Like, you can power up Ryu's fireball to be an EX version, and that will hit the person twice, basically, and do more damage in the process. So all of those type of things
come off
your drive meter, and that's a separate meter that is powered up from the beginning of the fight. So you have that available straight from the beginning. Right. So you can, straight from the beginning of a fight, you can do a drive impact, or you can do a EX enhanced version of one of your general, and I keep on going to say special move, but yeah, no, that's right, special moves rather than super moves. But yeah, so that all comes off the same meter. If that meter gets completely depleted at any time, and this is a totally new mechanic that's added to that, and the way those all kind of add together are a bit different. But one of the things that's completely different is if you completely deplete that meter, you enter a state where you're really vulnerable, basically. And that means that you can be dazed if you get hit against the edge of the screen, which is, again, dazing works slightly different to how it did before. But then it also means that you can't do drive impact moves, and you will take more damage, and I think you dish out slightly less damage as well. So the tendency there is to go on the defensive, but if you go on the defensive, if you're walking backwards away from your opponent, it'll actually take longer for that drive meter to refill. So you actually, even though you're weak, you actually want to go on the offensive, because if you hit the opponent or if you're stepping forward, then it'll actually refill that meter far more quickly and get you out of that weakened state more quickly. So there's a kind of risk-reward thing, but you don't want to enter that state. But sometimes it's worth you doing that to try and finish off a fight, basically. And yeah, like it adds a kind of really good balance of risk and reward and a back and forth between fights. And you've got to keep an eye on both of those meters, the special meter and the drive meter, to kind of keep an eye on things. The other mechanic that they use and that is used by that bar is called a drive parry. And that basically means that you hold down the 2 mid buttons, and that will it kind of turns you all blue, basically. You kind of, it's almost like armor, but you're blue rather than gold. You go gold when you're in armor, I think, and then blue. But anyway, so what that means is you can basically absorb hits like as if you were having armor, basically. So it basically gives you an invincibility for a short period of time. Now, I say a short period of time, but as, say, Zangief, you can actually hold those buttons down indefinitely, and you will just completely be invulnerable to all damage apart from throws when you're holding those buttons down, basically. Which makes Zangief a bit of a beast, because he's got quite a few things for getting in and around other people's moves, and then once he's up close and personal, he's still got his ever-loving spinning pile driver and other throws and stuff that can do a hefty amount of damage. Everyone's moveset has been slightly adjusted to kind of best suit that whole drive system. And as I said, Zangief's been adjusted in that way. And, other classic Street Fighter characters such as E Honda have been adjusted. He seems like a bit of a beast as well. He seems to be sort of dominating a bit online at the moment because he seems a bit overpowered compared to some other characters. But then, yeah, everyone's had a little bit of adjustment to go with that. Cammy's always been my main character, and I quite like the adjustments that they made to her. Like her drive, for instance, her drive impact move is very easy to combo on the back of, especially if you're adding one of the super moves you can or a throw on top of it. So I can do my drive impact and then go straight into a throw quite often as well. If you do too many drive impacts in a row, it tends to do a knockdown to a character, so it tends to not allow you to combo from as well, basically. What is your question, Mr. Dan?
My question is, does she still have a socially inappropriate hungry bum?
No, I'm really glad that she is slightly more appropriately attired. You would still say that she's possibly...
God for that.
Yeah, she's not like completely well covered, but she is at least like respectably could go out in public like that. Say, maybe not in some countries, but...
maybe it's just me getting older. Maybe it's just, quite rightly... society going, is that really okay? That we're finally asking these questions. I still get a little bit uncomfortable the way that some female characters are designed and displayed in certain Japanese games, I have to say.
And I would say that Street Fighter and other games in the Capcom things like Rival Schools and things have had questionable pasts with that as well. It unlocks a lot of artwork as you complete the arcade mode in this as well. And it just reminded me how many main pieces of Street Fighter art that have been, official artwork and are in this game still as well. It's like, oh yeah, like there didn't really seem to be many pictures of Chun-Li that didn't have an upskirt shot going on, basically.
Yep.
I mean, the fact that she does the spinning bird kick is probably a testament to that as well. I mean, I think you can make the case that there has been not only some misogynistic sexism amongst the way female characters are presented in Street Fighter. There's also some slightly, and most of it's tongue in cheek, so I think it's taken with in good faith that it's generally okay. Well, I think it's taken generally that it is in good faith. But I've always argued, sort of tongue in cheekly, that Street Fighter is kind of racist. Like, there's a lot of racist stereotypes in there. Dalsim probably being the standout example, but there's quite a few in there that are,
Say it ain't so, Tim.
a little
cultural
bit
stereotypes.
Yes.
No? Really? Heaven forbid, Tim, that such a thing has occurred to you.
Yes.
To be fair, it is entirely flipping obvious. It is just like, wow. Really?
Just a little bit heavy on that. Saying that thing, I will say that, Cammy is much better presented. There's also a bit in the kind of world tour mode, which I'll come back to describing in a bit. There's a bit where I was like, oh no, I thought they'd got better at all of this, but they did an upskirt shot on a schoolgirl. But she was wearing shorts, at least, underneath her skirt. So I'm like, okay, that's
okay
that's
then.
better
Jesus
than you've done
Christ.
previously, basically. But yeah, as I said, those sorts of things aside, I do think this is much more tactfully handled and kind of approached. And I think that Cammy in particular, I'm not as embarrassed to say that she's my main character to play with now, because she's actually dressed. She's not like, wearing a quite revealing bikini, basically. But anyway,
how middle-aged are we? You're going out in that, Cammy. Just looks like a belt. That's not a dress.
Can we sound more like dads when it comes to that thing without being dads?
I know, right? I know.
But yeah, so that is a bit better. But yeah, overall, I think, as I said, there's a really nice risk-reward to how it's feeling. I have played through, and I'll start going through the modes a bit, but I'm talking about how the game plays a bit as well. So I have played through the arcade mode, and it starts in normal, and I would say normal is fairly easy. And it also, as it defaults to having just 5 rounds before you get, it's 5 rounds overall. So, but one of those rounds, you're fighting a truck, not an actual person.
Okay.
Which is the equivalent of the old, car bashing level, bonus level previously. Yep. And I would say that is possibly a bit easier than previous Street Fighter arcade modes, basically. Especially because there is a boss-type character, and he's available to play as from straight away, and all the characters are unlocked straight away in this, which is my only criticisms. I like unlocking characters as I go in a fighting game, but hey.
You don't have to choose them, Tim. You can set special Tim challenge mode
But there's
and put gaffer tape on your screen until you've beaten them in the game.
There's a new guy called JP who has psycho power. There's no Bison in this because from a story standpoint, it's taking place after Shadaloo has been defeated. And it's kind of, there's a bit of a storyline to characters kind of finding their way after that has happened. With Cammy, for instance, she was always on the trail of Shadaloo and all that type of stuff. And Chun-Li as well, from an investigative side, was always kind of hunting Shadaloo. And they're kind of coming to terms with, the world in a post-Shadaloo world where they've already taken them down. So there's no M. Bison, and there's none of his cronies in the game at all, basically. The new boss character, and I say boss character, he's kind of, I think for all intents and purposes, he's the new boss character, a guy called JP, which is Johan something. But anyway, he's, a little bit cheap and got kind of psycho power attacks that do feel a little bit cheap. But
what? Surely not a final boss in a Street Fighter game that's cheap.
But he is
still angers me just thinking about that character.
But
Seth.
he's not as right so far. He's not as annoying as Seth, although that comes with a slight caveat. Also, him just being a boss character does come with a slight caveat as well, because every character in the game has a slightly different boss character. JP I mentioned because he tends to be the boss just for the first few people I fought through, and he tends to be the boss for more people than other people. But for instance, Jury is the boss for Chun-Li, and Chun-Li is the boss character for Jury. So there are characters that have their rivals and have their rivalries throughout the thing. But weirdly, Ryu isn't Ken's boss character. I think Guile and Ken are fighting off against each other because they're brothers-in-law. It kind of makes sense. And Ryu comes up against the new guy. I don't think I've ever had the urge to set my brother-in-law on fire with a flaming uppercut. Well, that's good. I mean, have you sent a sonic
boom? So I'm not sure that makes a lot of sense.
It makes some sense.
I mean,
in the fact that
I am prone to a bit of flatulence at the best of times, if that's what you're asking. Except I don't go sonic boom after I've dropped a particularly stinky tune on the bum trumpet. Although I would like to see that.
While we're on the subject of Ken, he's the one character that I think, for me, Ryu and Ken have always been fairly interchangeable. They have made slight differences over the years, and especially in the last couple of games. But for me, I've always been a Ken player over Ryu. But I would say from what I've played so far,
It's that perm, man.
Ryu seems much better than Ken. Ken was overpowered, I think, in the last game and possibly 4, but he seems to have been nerfed a bit too much for my liking. I don't like fighting as him as much, whereas Ryu, with his souped-up fireballs and some of his other moves, seems like he's got a definite advantage. But the arcade mode in general, I said it about having 5 rounds. You can also play a 12-round version where you play through more characters, although 2 of those rounds then become bonus rounds. There's the truck that I mentioned before, and there's also a thing where you have to parry basketballs, because, of course.
I have a question.
Yes?
Is the truck an unlockable character you can play as?
No.
Why not?
As I discussed, there are no unlockable characters unless you want to pay an extraordinary amount of money to get access to 4 characters via DLC. That's one of my only problems, again, is there's only, I think it's 18 characters to start with, and that isn't the biggest roster for a fighting game, and it's not the biggest roster we've ever seen in a Street Fighter game either. And I think it's £27 for the 4 characters to access the 4 new characters. There is some other content that comes with that, but
this is what happens when you let Yoshinori Ono go, all right? Now, if he was still at the helm, I'd be able to play as a truck, all right?
I mean,
damn it, Capcom.
Yeah, the last game was bad for DLC stuff as well, so hey. But no trucks. Although, I haven't seen the full limits of the character creator. I don't know how much you could make a character that looked like a truck. And that seems a good time. There are
how would you even anthropomorphize a truck?
There are a variety of other modes. There's online stuff, which I haven't actually gone and fought people online, but I've gone and looked at the Battle Hub, which is where the kind of online thing kind of centers around, where you can walk up to arcade cabinets. I played some of that in the beta. I haven't done so yet because I'm not in the mood for getting my ass kicked by lots of people online. But they've also got a few other bells and whistles in the Battle Hub where they've got a few arcade cabinets of other Capcom games. One of them being the original Street Fighter 2, which is quite nice. I heard there was Ghosts and Goblins in there, but I don't know if there's different ones in different regions. But for the moment, at least, there's Final Fight, Street Fighter 2, and a game called Pon Pon, I think it was. That was the one I didn't try. It looked like a platform thingy game, and I was like, I can't be bothered with that. But then there's a variety of...
I have a question, Tim.
Yes.
No. Well, you're probably about to come onto this.
Okay.
But you talked a lot about the kind of the classic arcadey mode. What I'm interested to find out about, and I think this is where you're going with the Battle Hub, is what the roll your own character is and how that, because to me, all the versions of the roll your own character I've seen look like someone's gone, we ought to let someone with not enough polygons in, really. And, just.
I mean, you can make some pretty ugly characters, and some people have made some very deliberate ones. Just before I dive into that, though, the arcade mode is housed in, there's 3 different sections to the thing. There's the Battle Hub where there's the online stuff and the few other games I was just mentioning. There's arcade mode is housed in Fighting Ground, which also contains a number of other modes. So you've got your versus modes in there, which includes a standard one-on-one and a team battle. And then you've also got a variety of other single-player or possibly multiplayer modes housed in there as well. Some of the ones, there was one that we had available in the beta and some other modes that is now unlocked. But there's a thing where you have to achieve various different aims. So it might be like do a throw or hit this score or knock your opponent down. And there's various different rules you can pick there. And in conjunction with that, you can pick various different options for like a weird thing that's happening. Like one of them is just a bull will charge across the screen. And other ones are like there was drones flying around. And there's just various different things that you can do with that. I haven't tried them all, but all of those so far, it just helps add an extra layer of variation to kind of the one-on-one fighting modes. And it's kind of nice. It adds a little extra flavor as well. And that may have spun, and I'm guessing some of that may have spun out of, let's give players access to some of the stuff that's available in World Tour mode. Now, that is where you get to, as you were asking about, create your own character. And
can I just say, I've already gone down a rabbit hole of Googling weird character create. I've come across a dude who's literally There's just a guy who is literally a walking neck.
Yep.
It's
Then you can make yourself. I've made a very more muscly version of me that's also quite wrinkly for some reason. It was the
Mr.
one I made
November.
It was the one I made in the beta, and I fortunately it allowed me to transfer because I couldn't be bothered to do another character, create a thing. It is quite extensive.
Nice.
There is a lot going on. But then once you're actually in the world tour mode as well, it starts you off where Luke is the master that's kind of training you and kind of leading you into the game. Gives you a kind of overview of some of the basics, and then kind of introduces you to how the world tour mode works. So basically, you ostensibly in the game, you've got a phone that comes up with different options and gives you your kind of missions and stuff like that. And then a world map where you can see and kind of, the world where you can walk around. And I've heard people describe it as a bit like a Yakuza game or like a Dragon as they've renamed themselves. And it is a bit like that. It feels like you're wandering around an environment. It is supposed to be Metro City. So it's kind of more based on an Americanized city, but it's got like a Chinatown area and stuff like that. And so it's got a kind of a slight international flavor to it, but it feels like an Americanized city because it's, as I said, based on Metro City, which for anyone that doesn't know is the city that Final Fight, the game I was mentioning before, takes place in, which is another Capcom property and stuff like that. Anyway,
Do you meet Hagar? Mayor Hagar?
I have not met him yet, no. But you could make him yourself, basically. But what happens there is you initially start off with
like a roided up Tom Selleck.
Yeah.
Love him.
Yeah, you initially start off with some of Luke's moves as your kind of basis. So you've got like he's got like a sandblast, which is his equivalent of a fireball, and I can't remember what they call it, but he's got an equivalent of a dragon punch as well, basically. So you get I think the dragon punch and one of his other moves, like anyway, but yeah, you get those special moves you get access to, but you also get like some of his base moves as the kind of the way your character kind of operates. And fairly early on, you get introduced to Chun-Li, who then gives you a second set of options. So you can switch between Luke's style and Chun-Li style, and that will change the way your character moves and the way your character, like the base kind of set of moves that they have available to them. So, for instance, with Chun-Li, you'll have the kind of, the standard kick that she kind of has when you're crouching kick, and she's got quite a long reach on it. And you'll have like not spinning bird kicks and stuff like that, but you'll have, I think she probably got an air throw, and or I haven't even exactly investigated that. But you'll have like your character will move as if it was Chun-Li. Basically, you can see that in her movements and the way she flows and stands and poses, and the way you flow and stand and pose is kind of alongside that. But as you go throughout the game, you can unlock more of her special moves that you can gain access to. So you start with this spinning bird kick, but then you might get access to her fireball and stuff like that. And you can pick and choose which special moves you have from which masters. So you could have the dragon punch from Luke, and you could have the spinning bird kick from Chun-Li. And you also get more special moves that you can unlock, as in not just more moves, but as in more slots that you can slot those moves into. So more moves that you'll have available to you in any one fight as you go as well. And as you progress with each of those masters, you'll unlock more of their special moves that you'll gain access to as well. But those special moves can also be used to navigate your way around the environment and to destroy. Well, for instance, the spinning bird kick is generally used for traversal, and in the opening level, especially in Chinatown, it's used from crossing from one side of the street to the other. Like you climb up and get on an awning, and then you spinning bird kick to the other side of the street to get on the awning on the other side of the street.
I'm fairly sure there's a joke in there somewhere, but I can't be bothered to find it.
Well, you're basically, because you're destroying other things like signs and bins or barrels and all that type of stuff. There is a reference of, street furniture fighter, basically. Because
nice.
You're actually beating up a lot of stuff. But you can also, at any point in time, generally at any point in time, walk up to anyone in the environment and kick off a fight. Now, you can go and politely ask for a fight if you want to do it nicely, but you can also just dragon punch someone.
How politely? I need to know how politely.
just say, excuse me.
How polite? Excuse me, dear chap. I was
Excuse me,
wondering
dear
if
chap.
you would engage in a light round of consensual fisticuffs until one of us can take the pugilism no more. How does that sound to you, Sirrah?
There's a kind of MacGuffin reason why everyone in the city is up for a fight. Apparently, like after dealing with the whole Mad Gear thing and dealing with all the final fight thing, everyone in the city is quite tough these days in Metro City, and they're all
they're
kind
a bunch
up
of
for,
street
up
toughs.
for a
I
fight,
get you.
basically. Yeah. So that's the kind of but it does mean that you get into ridiculous things where you're walking up to some little old lady who's like 3 levels above you and just picking a fight with her, basically. But
nice.
you need to be a bit
And
cautious.
will they have like randomized movesets from like the other characters? Will they like random old lady would like spinning bird kick you or something?
Yes, but with some of the characters, you can see which master they've learned from. So you can see before you have a fight with them which type of character they're going to be. So there'll be like a little square with Chun-Li's face next to them as you walk up to them above their heads, and that'll let you know that they'll fight in Chun-Li style, basically. There's also just a variety of goons, like kind of just around the environment. The first gang that you come across in this are generally all wearing cardboard boxes on their heads for reasons.
Okay.
And so rather than being polite and just walking up to them and asking them a fight, those guys particularly, you'll want to do a spinning bird kick or a dragon punch or whatever to kick the fight off. And that'll actually give you some advantage going into the fight because they'll have less energy as they go. You can also use items in the fights as well. So you've got stuff where you can replenish your energy or where you can take stuff so that it will take less damage. So as I said, you kind of want to, you can pick fights with people that are higher levels than you, but that will make the fight harder, basically. And there are people that are way too high a level for you that will be very difficult to beat if you kind of pick a fight with them. So you want to be a little bit cautious and kind of go into things with some trepidation. I haven't done too much. I've got further than I did because you had to restart from the beginning in World Tour mode, and I've got further than I did in the beta now, but I haven't got too far into the game. Right, it's exactly what I wanted. I literally, as I said on a previous episode, I literally asked Ono-san for this mode in a Street Fighter game, and he said no. So I think he had to leave for us to get this mode.
This is the problem, Tim. They let him go. This is your fault, Tim, why I can't play as a truck.
And it's...
God damn it, Tim.
Be careful what you wish for, possibly, because it does feel... It feels like a nice extension to the game, and I can see me playing a lot of time in it, putting a lot of time into it. At the same time, it does feel a bit janky, and I don't know if that's just at the beginning where I haven't unlocked that many special moves, where I haven't sort of customized my character. At the moment, it feels like I'm fighting as Chun-Li with one hand behind my back type of thing. It doesn't feel like a fully realized character, basically. And I think some of those concerns and criticisms will probably work themselves out in the wash as I get deeper into the game and as I unlock more things. But it's also, I don't know, it's not fully voiced. You get like people saying, huh, and at the beginning of things, but they don't like voice their whole
It's a bit like
lines.
podcasting with me and Coleman.
Yeah. And then there's kind of...
me and Coleman are NPCs. Tim's the main character.
Yeah.
This explains so much.
But there are parts where that it continues the story, and you'll get some lines of dialogue from Chun-Li, but not everything you're doing in game is always voiced and everything like that. So it feels a little bit like not quite fully fleshed out or fully realized, but I think that's okay within the context of what it is and what it's doing. I think that's all right. I don't know if you saw, but this is one of the, I think, less than 40 games now that have ever got a 40 out of 40 from Famitsu. And 2 of them have been in the last month, basically. So I think one of them was Zelda and one of them was Street Fighter. So
this month is just frankly silly.
And you will
It
come on
needs
to
to have a
another
word
game
with
in a minute
itself.
that you'll be good about. There was a lot there. There was a lot to like. I didn't really mention going through, and I don't want to go through each and every individual character, but there is half a dozen or so new characters added to the roster, and I like all of them, basically. Maybe even more than half a dozen. I haven't counted. Luke, Jamie, JP, Kimberly. Yeah, there's more than half a dozen. And all of them are good, and I like playing all of them, and all of them seem like they're well balanced with the new drive impact system, and all the existing characters seemed like they've been well balanced to kind of work with that as well. As I said, there's some characters have gone up and down, and some mileage may vary. Ken's not so good. Pre-release, a lot of people were talking about how good Kimberly was, and she seems really good because she's really fast, really in your face, and really good. But I actually prefer Lily. And Lily, name is actually Lily Hawk, and she is the kind of descendant of, I believe, daughter, but I haven't actually specified that, of Thunderhawk, who was first introduced in Super Street Fighter. And she's a kind of progression of him. She's got like big war clubs, which seems unfair. I never understand why some Street Fighter characters are allowed weapons. It seems a little unfair, but she's got kind of a wind-powered base
They're
thing.
street toughs, mate.
And a bit like Jamie, who we've talked about in the podcast before. Jamie's the kind of drunken master, and the first time they've introduced the drunken master to that.
Don't talk about Jamie like that. He's a lovely bloke, that Smash Soul.
Not Smash Soul. Jamie in Street Fighter 6.
Just because he's Scottish doesn't mean he's got a drinking problem. Jesus, Tim, will you stop culturally stereotyping our listeners? Jesus.
Jamie's got a mechanic where his moves get empowered by the more he drinks.
Shame on you.
And there's a few characters that have now got those type of things, and Lily's one of them. Lily's actually got like a wind power that you can power up by rotating your clubs, and kind of makes you wind clad as it is. But that changes the way that your moves work, and it gives a bit more power to them. Makes it so that you can combo through some of them easier and stuff like that as well. It's really deep. I kind of mentioned about the arcade game. One of the things is, I generally play through it in normal, and I cranked it all up to to hardest to try and make my way through on 5 fights. And with Lily, I think I got my arse handed to me by Zangief in the first round that I played, just because I was getting used to playing with Lily again, kind of thing, having not done it for a bit. But then I went through the whole game, being the truck and the other 4 characters, like without losing a round. Other than that first one, I lost to Zangief. But then when I got to the final boss, which for Lily was Dulcim kicked my arse. Like repeatedly. Like the first time I came up against him, he perfected me. And I hadn't been perfected in the game up to that point.
Good work, Dulcim.
And then I gave it about, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 other attempts. And I had to give up. I could not beat him, basically. I'm like, okay, I have to go back to the drawing board. And one of the things, and I'll finish it off here because I've obviously been going for a while on this, but one of the things that they've done really well in this game that really helps with the onboarding of new people, or people like myself that have always had a love for Street Fighter and played it, but have never really got into the depths of how, getting really good at the game and really getting into the combos and how it all works. But the training modes and the way that they kind of tutorialize everything is done really well to a really high standard. Like, it will show you the move, show you how that works, show you all the frame data if you want to kind of pull up all that information, that you can have the characters, the other player character doing a certain move so that you can practice how you respond to that. There's a whole way to work through your combos. Like, all of those have generally been done in fighting games before, but this is the highest standard I've seen it, with the most amount of stuff done, and also just really well done in terms of like showing you on the command list an example of the move so that you can see the move.
Oh,
and
cool.
Yeah, like really, really, really in depth and really good. So if you're a semi-casual Street Fighter gamer, I think the World Tour mode works for you because it helps build up your knowledge and your appreciation of how different moves work. But then there's also a really good tutorial and kind of training mode that really helps take you through the kind of deeper minutiae of Street Fighter as well. And I'm really looking forward to getting really deep into that as well. Like, as I said, a bit of a thing with the business model and the extra characters and stuff. But the base game is 54, which for, a big game these days is on the slightly lower side. So that's one good thing at least. But yeah, like so far, I am really enjoying it and looking forward to getting in depth and playing more. It's just a shame that there's a slurry of games coming out after this as well, because I'd really like to spend a bit of time and get a bit deeper into this as well. But yeah, so far, really good, and all the praise that it's garnered so far is worthy. So yeah.
Fair enough. Well, so that Street Fighter 6 sounds like a pretty solid, nailed-on recommend from you and Tim. Dear God, we're already a long way into this podcast, so I'm probably going to have to cut my Diablo 6.
Yes, sorry.
Diablo 6, Diablo 4 Yeah, Tim's been talking so long, Diablo 6 is now out. And bearing in mind, it was like 11 years between Diablo 3 and Diablo 4. You know, all I can say is I'm now 72 and I'm loving life. Yeah, Diablo 4 came out this week. It's been available to all and sundry since the 6th of June. And for us people with a bit of a money sense imbalance, there was early access from the 2nd. Yeah, so I'm probably about 2/3 of the way through on my first playthrough. Now, I haven't been rushing it, but I do have a couple of top tips. So I've decided to roll a sorcerer who used to be a wizard in Diablo 3 speak.
Right.
But obviously that's a rather gendered term, so sorcerer is this time around.
Fair.
Yeah, so that's kind of my happy place with characters. I often do kind of the mage build, but I end up running a close quarters mage build, which is asking for trouble, bearing in mind generally they're a bit weedy. They will fall over if you look at them funny. So that's been a bit of a fun build to do. But yeah, I mean, Diablo 4 is unsurprisingly a loot-driven ARPG, much like Diablo 3 was, but this time without that pesky real money auction house nonsense. It does have, however, with it, quite considerable bevy of not so microtransactions for just cosmetics. There is a set of armor that will cost you £21.
Ooh, yes, I heard it has horse armor.
And that's just one bit of kit for one character.
Ooh.
You know, they are clearly going after like the whales here in order to keep the money rolling in. I'm hoping that will translate into cheaper season passes and potentially expansions down the road, but we will see. So at the moment, it's only the base game that's available. The seasons don't start for another couple of weeks at least yet. I think that's probably quite sensible. They want people to play the main game before they feel like they're in full FOMO mode with seasons kicking off. So the basic setup of the game is, yet again, you're in the world of Sanctuary. It's like a couple of decades since the events of Diablo 3. The world's a bit messed up. Devils and angels still aren't getting on much. The Nephilim, who are the I know, right? The Nephilim, who are the offspring of devils and angels when they moved to Sanctuary couple hundred years ago, are still like the weird child no one wants, and the devils and the angels are using them as kind of playing pieces on a board to get where they want to be. In terms of the story, it's much more, certainly as far as I've got so far, it's a lot more nuanced than Diablo 3, which is basically, lol, devils are evil, lol, look at that, oh, look at these horny people, let's go and stab them in the face. And then, aren't we great people? We're heroes. Look at that big, weird monster over there with all the 15 arms and the tentacles. We ought to probably kill him. Yes, let's.
Yeah.
The storytelling is a lot more deft this time around, where it sounds like I'm about to speak about Destiny. My apologies. But it's kind of like, the line between good and evil is actually a bit blurred in Diablo 4. I won't say too much more than that because I don't want to spoil it. And that really, I think, really suits the game. It feels perhaps a grittier take on it than Diablo 3 does. I mean, it may well be that, storytelling in video games 11 years ago is very different to how it was now. But to me, it feels like a nice, refreshing change. The big change from a gameplay point of view is you now get a mount, because how else would you buy horse armor, right? But you don't unlock that till fairly late in the game. So, there will be some plodding about on your feet for quite a bit of the story. But there's a really nice mix of move sets there to keep you entertained until you start getting, fast mobility around the map unlocked. It really does feel more so than other entries in the Diablo series so far. There's some really deep build crafting to go on. I mean, I haven't even scratched the surface. I mean, put it this way, there are items of kind of like specking out your build that I'm like, yeah, I'm going to worry about that at some other point when I finish my journey through the story. And, there's like, you can put extract kind of characteristics of legendary bits of armor, put them on other bits of armor. There are, kind of unlockable, kind of reusable aspects that you can apply to items in your inventory that you can then equip on your character that synergize with certain abilities. And then there's this whole Paragon system, which I haven't even got to yet. And that is like kind of the continuous onwards, micromanaging the kind of your build so you can kind of really perfect the build that you want.
Okay.
So there's a lot of, if you like your min-maxing, if you like your build crafting, there's a lot there too. I've really enjoyed it so far. How it fares with repeated playthroughs, I don't know. Obviously, that's where the meat and potatoes of Diablo is. Really kind of the story is just like the tutorial to get you going. And on that note, I would probably, if you're going to play it for the first time, even if you've played previous Diablo games, I know the temptation's there to knock it up to World Tier 2. So when you start, you have like difficulty options, essentially. World Tier 1 is the basic version. World Tier 2, more difficult enemies, but you get 20% more experience. But I think the trade-off of that, of the tougher enemies, isn't actually worth the 20%, because actually the subsequent difficulties where the real cool gear and the real cool progression lives, you've got to complete the story and you've got to complete what's called the capstone dungeon for that world tier anyway. So considering you're just going to be grinding through the levels, I would just recommend stick it on World Tier 1, mainline the campaign, probably don't get too distracted in side quests, and then you're going to be able to get to, the really super fun bit of the game a little quicker. That's probably where I went wrong. I got very distracted with side quests and trying to monster on through with a higher world difficulty. Once you've kind of gone through the story, I think then really the world opens up. You'll probably be engaging in public events a lot more, like kind of horde invasions and like world bosses, strongholds, that kind of stuff. There's loads of stuff in this game to keep you entertained. And, there's so much here that I probably, I've only scratched the surface. And I can see this is going to keep me coming back for more and more, just to see the numbers get bigger and bigger for a good couple of years.
I have a question, Mr. Dan. Have you
yes, sir.
been playing it in single player so far, generally?
Generally, I've been doing stuff on my lonesome, but it is a connected world, so you will always encounter other players.
Okay.
I haven't done anything co-op yet, mainly because I just wanted to experience the story
and get
on at my own pace, and I know I'm going to be doing a lot of co-op stuff when people are going through leveling up their
ults. That sounds like the best way to do it, no? To play through the game single player the first time at least, and then look to co-op on subsequent playthroughs. I mean, that's one of my concerns with not picking up the game initially, is that I won't get the time to play through it on my own and then join you for multiplayer stuff.
I mean, I think there's, I will be rolling multiple characters, and if the seasons are like anything before in Diablo, then you'll be starting afresh every season to get the most out of that season. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. I would jump in when you're ready. And the story's worth experiencing. It's, you could mainline it in, a day and a half or so, but, take your own time, enjoy it, enjoy it rather than thinking you're missing out on all the cool stuff. It's still going to be there. There is so much to do. Like, you're never going to do it all in a single playthrough. And then once you've got through the story and unlocked the extra stuff, it's probably then you can dive in with mates to mop up all the dungeons you've all got left to do. So you can help each other unlock the really cool
stuff as well, sort of thing,
But, I've really enjoyed it. I mean, I obviously, I've got more to report back on, and I'll probably kind of, when the first season drops, give you a couple more thoughts on that. But if you like ARPGs, this is a corking game. I think now that the silly season of early access has passed, I would probably go for the standard edition and wait to see what the season pass model looks like. So the standard edition on PC costs 60 quid. The digital deluxe and ultimate editions, which have extra bits of horse armor and I think bundle in the first season pass, come in at 80 quid and 90 quid. Respectively.
So you can buy Bobby Kotick a new boat, basically, yeah?
Certainly can. Certainly can. So, but he's not coming over the channel in that boat. We're not having any Microsoft Activision merger here in good old Brexit Britain. Thank you very much.
Might be the last Blizzard game we get in Britain for a while, so soak it up while you can.
I mean, Jesus. Yeah, I know. I'm not going to go on a rant because I will go on a rant. But yes, I've really enjoyed it. I think let's see how their monetization model works. I'm hoping them going so hard after the kind of the real kind of whales to bankroll it. I am hoping that translates into slightly more reasonable season pass or expansion prices for everyone else. I very much doubt that. I think that's the only thing I really need to see before I give it an unreserved go out and buy this. What you're
Right,
doing,
yeah.
still playing that, still sitting there, not playing this. Because I think obviously previous in Diablo 3, the seasons were free, whereas now there is still a free track, but it's not quite clear exactly what the differences are between the paid track and the free track. Let's see. But I very much enjoyed my time with Diablo so far, Diablo 4 so far. Probably will have completed it by the time you'll get round to Mike again next week. But if ARPGs are your bag, if you like numbers getting bigger, if you like min-maxing things and build crafting, then, this is the game for you. Corking stuff, thoroughly recommend it. Oh, and there's cross-play as well. So it doesn't matter where you play. You can play with everybody within social norms, of course.
That's all good.
So there we go. That's how you do a game review in 10 minutes, Tim.
Yeah, that's much better than me. I took far too long. I don't even know how I took that long. There was a lot to talk about. There was a lot of different modes. A lot of different things going on, but hey.
You're preaching to the choir.
Speaking
there,
of me talking for too long, the other thing I was going to talk about this week, I probably will just mothball and talk about another time. But I went to UK Games Expo over the weekend. I got to play a game called Star Wars Shatterpoint, which is, for anyone that likes their tabletop games, it's X-Wing Alliance, but with characters rather than spaceships. And yeah, that seemed quite good, although quite expensive. I also got to play, slightly more relevant to us, I got to play a thing called All on Board, which was a new upcoming VR system for board games, basically. And I will talk about that more this week with Mr. Kev, because we are planning on doing an episode of VRB this week as well.
Well, that'll keep you coming back for more, won't it?
I think we'll shelve talking about the Apple headset, the Apple Vision Pro. We'll talk about that more when Coleman's back next week, but also Kev and I plan on talking about that a bit on VRB this week as well. So we'll probably talk about that.
But in summary,
more.
lordy goodness, it looks like it's going to be expensive. And slightly strikes me as an answer to a question no one's quite asked yet. So $3,500 or £3,000 will buy you the most ridiculous ski mask you've ever seen. That is the long and short of the Apple Vision Pro.
I will say this is the first generation of an Apple thing, and like a lot of their releases, this is the prosumer version. So it's not made for general mass market consumers. It's made for the first batch of people that are going to make things for it in sort of primarily, and then people that can afford to just splash that much money on something as well. But yeah, bet against Apple at your peril. I do think it was quite odd that they basically avoided the word VR, even though for all intents and purposes, because it's just got a pass through and it's not really an AR headset. It is a VR headset. Although you could argue that it's VR that gives you AR capabilities. So some people are referring to it as a mixed reality headset. Some people are referring it to as an XR headset. It's definitely messing around with the definitions that we had for what a VR headset is as well. And again, we'll talk about that a bit more on VRB and possibly next week. Although we're going to have a very busy show next week because there are quite a few things going on. The other thing we won't get time to really talk about this week was the thing that happened last night, which was the Guerrilla Collective Showcase 2023. Urge people to go and watch that. It had a lot of indie games talked about, a lot of things. I think my highlight was actually DLC for an indie game we've already got that I didn't know was on the way.
Oh, okay.
But that is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, which is getting some DLC with some extra characters, some extra game modes and stuff as well. Alongside that, they also
probably explains why it's just fallen off Game Pass.
Possibly. They've also, it's a bit suspicious, isn't it? But yeah, they also had footage of the new game by the same studio, Domitsu, I think their studio is. But Toxic Crusaders is the next game being made by them, and that's quite interesting. Iron Meat looked like a fun game. I'll just quickly mention because it looked like a kind of a Turrican, a 2-player Turrican game,
right?
But with meat also involved. Like there was meaty enemies,
Lovely.
And it looked a bit weird.
Lovely.
But I'll just mention that because that looked interesting. The other one that caught my eye just very quickly as well was a thing called Jump Light Odyssey, and that looked a bit like FTL, but with a bit more graphics and a bit more realization. But you've got like a multi-layered...
Bit more graphics?
Well,
that's a technical term, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes. but it kind of, more graphically intense because it was a very simplified version of FTL. It was almost like a plan view of the ship, whereas this one's got and I think they even referenced it. The kind of those was it Osborne books, but the books where it had the superstructures and all the kind of different layers of things that you could see, and the kind of illustrations of things in all sort of blown apart and different layers. It looked like that, and you were moving between different layers of the ship, and they had kind of the crew quarters and your engine and all that type of stuff. But that looked interesting. That looked like a cool little spaceship management type game. And yeah, that one caught my eye. There were other good things in there as well. That was just a very quick overview of that thing. But if you want to go see that, go have a look. There's almost too many games to talk about overall. But just so you know, we're recording.
There are too many games to talk about.
Yeah,
overall.
we're recording on the Thursday night, and so Summer Games Fest is happening in a couple of hours, so we won't get to talk about that till next week. Then there's also the Xbox Showcase and Starfield Direct that's happening on the weekend, Ubi Forward, and the Capcom Showcase, which have all been announced. There's also the Future Games Show happening this weekend. So there is a lot going on this weekend, and we're going to have a very busy show next week as well.
I am hoping Forza Motorsport drops on us at the Xbox Showcase. I'm secretly hoping.
You've been betting now on that one for a while.
I
wouldn't put it past them, but I think we're more likely to get a release date. We'll see, but hey.
Yeah, I think so. But on that list, out of Guerrilla Collective as well, just like to quickly just shine a quick bit like Crashlands 2, sequel to a very fun kind of looty roguelike game with a bit of constructy stuff as well. There's all kinds of things in that game. It's really good. You can get it on Apple Arcade. I think Crashlands 1 is available on that. Good fun game. Go check it out. So there we go. That's your lot, I think.
One other thing I'll just mention just quickly, Viewfinder, which I spoke about when I played at WASD, got a release date. I think it's July 19th it's coming out. But more relevant than that to today, there is a demo coming out later this evening, so go and grab that. I don't know if that's part of the Summer Games Fest and whether that's the case, but yeah, 18th of July is the thing. It's a very interesting puzzle game. I spoke about it on the show before, so I won't go into it. But the demo is out on PlayStation Store today, possibly other areas as well, but I know it's out on the PlayStation Store. So go and look that up and get your mitty grubs, I was going to say. Grubby mitts.
Yeah, greasy little mitts on that. Yeah, greasy little mitts.
Because I recommend that, and it's very good. So, yeah.
Right. Well, I think that is certainly enough for this show. I think we've all talked enough. We've all heard a lot about a lot of things in excruciating detail from at least one member of this podcast. And so we are probably going to start packing up our things and shuffling our way off stage left. But first, I'm going to tell you that you should go to tpublic.com/stores/BRB because there's sweet merch. And we all love sweet merch. I love t-shirts, I love mugs, I love stickers, I love face masks because I still like to live in the heyday like it's the pandemic. All of these things are available with my face and other images that might be slightly more appropriate to wear. So there we go. tpublic.com/stores/BRB. Tim, Tuesday is a Tuesday once again. So tell us what's happening this Tuesday on Tuesday.
Each and every Tuesday, we do an event called Tabletop Tuesday at the Loading Bar in Stoke, Newington. Some weeks we have a feature game where you can come along play that and win it just by playing. This week, we're having a social deduction week. So we're playing social deduction games. So that's big games for lots of people. And we'll be featuring Blood on the Clock Tower this week. So we're having games of Blood on the Clock Tower. Come along and we can put you in a group of people to play either along with us or possibly another group. We might have multiple groups going. We'll have at least one game of Blood on the Clock Tower going at once. And so, yeah, I think it does up to 12 people or something like that. So, yeah, there's quite a few people that can fit in one game at once.
It's a big old clock tower.
Yep. So if you're interested, come along, play the game. And it's a good fun one. We played it last month as well. So this is the big social deduction game at the moment. It's kind of, garnering all social deduction kind of attention at the moment. So, yeah, come along and play Blood on the Clock Tower.
It's like the Traitors, but with less fringe because Claudia Winkleman isn't involved.
We played the Traitors card game the other week. I can highly unrecommend that. It is not
Excellent.
good. Whereas Blood on the Clock Tower
Excellent.
is very good, and I do recommend
Is
that.
good.
So come along and play that. If you need more details,
Well,
there
there
are
we
more
go.
details on the top left-hand corner of BigRedBarrel.com, or you can join the over 2,000 people in our meetup group. Search for Tabletop Tuesdays on Meetup.com.
Indeed. Now, sadly, because we're running a little bit long this week, we're not going to have time to get into listener questions, but we do like to delve into listener questions.
Yes.
And where do you ask these questions, I hear you ask? Well, if you have a question, much like I do, make sure you head on down to the comments section of this here post, or you can head on over to our Discord server, which you can find a link to on the front page of www.bigredbarrel.com. You can also find links to that in our show notes, as well as links to our Facebook site, which is facebook.com/BRB, and our Twitter account, which is twitter.com/BigRedBarrel, and our YouTube, which is Big Red Barrel TV, just to, mix it up. So do come and say hello to us on all of those things. There are links lovingly provided by Future Coleman in the show notes of this show. Likewise, do feel free to leave us a review. We do scour all of the places for our reviews, and it makes us, nicely happy. Gives us a warm little fuzzy feeling inside whenever someone does leave us a review. So please do let us know what you think. Constructive criticism, always welcome. Being a naughty person with who just likes making rude words at us, not so welcome. There we go. Constructive is the way of the thing. Coleman, possibly edit that ramble out because it was rubbish. Thank you. Cheers. So he probably just hasn't. I'll find out.
It's probably left
when
it
I
in
listen
harder.
back to the show. It probably has. Yeah, exactly. Edit that, but more. So that is pretty much your lot. Next week's show, it sounds like it's going to be a lot of stuff to cover.
Yeah.
We've got games fests, we've got Xbox things, we've got Tim's played another game and needs to talk about it for 15 hours. All of these things are probably going to happen. So make sure you come back next week. But all that's left this week is really for me to remind you that I have been Dan.
I might have been Tim. I also
There's
might
been
have
no
spoken
chaos,
about Street
there's no
Fighter for
Coleman.
40 chuffing minutes. But,
Yeah, you bloody did, mate. Gonna tell you that. You most certainly chuffing did. Anyway, we're all done. Tim's going to go before he starts speaking more or his bladder explodes. Usually happens at this point of the podcast. So thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back next week. And until next time, dear listeners, toodle bye.
Your ears are quite welcome.
For the podcasting goodness that you just heard.
Why not roll on over
To BigRedBarrel.com.
for more podcasts?
News, reviews, and videos from the biggest, reddest site on the internet. BigRedBarrel.com.
At the same time, I've known and been a massive fan of Kenny Shi for a long time. Ken, of course, also contributed to Res, which is, of course, or Res Infinite, as it's known in the VR world, which is a stunning game, of course.